Welcome to Outside Views. Today we continue our series BRITURN, the Obstacles. And this is Chapter 4, the Free Movement of Capital. As we examine the path for the UK to join the European Union again, maybe, it's important to remember that this would not be a simple reversal of Brexit. The UK would need to apply for EU membership as a new candidate undergoing the rigorous accession process. And today's focus is on Chapter 4, as I said, this Chapter 4 of the Acquis Communautaire, the free movement of capital. The free movement of capital is one of the four fundamental freedoms of the European Union. It ensures that capital flows can move freely between member states and between the EU and third countries, facilitating cross-border investments, payments, and economic integration. And this chapter also includes rules governing cross-border payments, the execution of securities transfer orders, and critical measures to combat money laundering and terrorist financing. For the UK, joining the EU again would require aligning its financial systems, regulatory frameworks, and enforcement mechanisms with these rules. So let's explore what this would entail and the challenges the UK would face in completing this chapter. The first aspect of this chapter is the removal of restrictions on the movement of capital. EU member states must ensure that there are no unjustified barriers to the flow of investments, financial transfers, and other capital movements within the single market. For the UK, this would involve harmonizing its financial regulations with EU standards. Post-Brexit, the UK has developed its own regulatory frameworks, particularly in the financial services sector. And these frameworks may differ from EU rules in key areas, creating potential conflicts. To comply with the Acquis, the UK would need to review and potentially amend its legislation to eliminate any discrepancies. And one critical area is cross-border payments. The EU has established comprehensive rules to ensure that payments between member states are as efficient, secure, and cost-effective as domestic transactions. And this includes regulations on transparency, fees, and of course data protection. The UK, having left the single market, is no longer part of the EU's payment systems. Joining again would require the UK to reintegrate into these systems and adopt the relevant regulations. And this would involve significant technical adjustments and coordination with EU institutions to ensure compatibility. The directive on money laundering and terrorist financing is another key component of this chapter. EU rules require banks and other financial operators to identify customers, monitor transactions, and report suspicious activities. And these measures are critical for preventing financial crime and ensuring the integrity of the single market. While the UK has implemented its own anti-money laundering regulations, they may not fully align with EU standards. So joining the EU again would require the UK to harmonize its rules and strengthen its administrative and enforcement capacity. And this includes enhancing cooperation between supervisory authorities, but also law enforcement agencies and prosecutors to combat financial crime effectively. The creation of effective administrative and enforcement capacity is a central requirement for this chapter. EU member states must have robust institutions capable of monitoring compliance, investigating violations, and enforcing the rules. For the UK, rebuilding this capacity would require significant investment in institutions, but also training for staff and a commitment to ongoing cooperation with EU bodies. And this includes participating in EU agencies such as the European Banking Authority and the European Securities and Markets Authority. These agencies play a critical role in ensuring the consistent application of EU rules and fostering cooperation among member states. Another challenge is the need to rebuild trust and cooperation with EU member states and institutions. Free movement of capital relies on mutual confidence in the integrity and stability of each member state's financial system. Post-Brexit, the UK's decision to diverge from EU rules in certain areas has created tensions. Joining the EU again would require the UK to demonstrate its commitment to upholding the highest standards of financial regulation and transparency. And this would involve not only legislative changes, but also proactive engagement with EU partners to rebuild relationships and address any lingering concerns. And the political challenges of this chapter cannot be underestimated. The free movement of capital is closely tied to broader debates about sovereignty, regulation, and economic policy. For example, aligning with EU rules on capital movement could limit the UK's ability to implement certain policies, such as capital controls or restrictions on foreign investments. And this could reignite debates about the balance of power between national governments and EU institutions. Building public and political support for these changes would require a clear and compelling case for the economic and social benefits of joining the EU again. And another critical element is the role of cross-border investments. The EU single market facilitates the free flow of investments across member states, fostering economic growth and innovation. For the UK, joining the EU again would mean not only regaining access to these opportunities, but also ensuring that its investment climate aligns with EU standards. And this includes adopting EU rules on investor protection, corporate governance, and transparency. For example, the EU's Shareholder Rights Directive aims to enhance corporate transparency and encourage long-term investment strategies. The UK would need to align with these rules to demonstrate its commitment to fostering a stable and attractive investment environment. Reintegrating into the EU's financial frameworks would also require addressing practical challenges. For instance, the UK would need to rejoin the single euro payments area in full, the SEPA. They still use it, but there's a lot of added stuff in it because they need more EU standards for payment processing, data security, and consumer protection. And this would involve significant technical adjustments for financial institutions and payment service providers, because there's always a lot of uncertainty in this meantime. But the benefits of seamless cross-border payments, which still are working at the moment, don't get me wrong here, but it would enhance the UK's position as a global financial hub. And the fight against financial crime is another area where the UK would need to demonstrate progress. The EU rules on money laundering and terrorist financing are among the most stringent in the world, requiring member states to implement robust systems for identifying and, of course, reporting suspicious activities. The UK's current framework, while comprehensive, may need to be updated to align with EU standards, and this could involve strengthening the role of regulatory bodies, enhancing data sharing mechanisms, and improving coordination between law enforcement agencies. Building trust with EU partners in this area would be critical for ensuring a smooth accession progress. And from a technical perspective, the UK's well-developed financial systems and institutions do provide a strong foundation for meeting these requirements, technically. However, the political and administrative challenges are indeed significant. Joining the EU again would require not only legislative changes, but also a cultural shift towards greater integration and cooperation with EU partners. And this would involve addressing public concerns about the famous sovereignty, but also about transparency and the balance of power between national and EU institutions. So in conclusion, Chapter 4, the free movement of capital, highlights both the opportunities and the obstacles of a potential BRITURN. While the benefits of seamless cross-border investments and financial integration are clear, the process of aligning with EU rules would require significant political will, public support, and administrative effort. And for the UK, this chapter is not just about harmonizing laws. It's about rebuilding trust, addressing misconceptions about financial regulation, and demonstrating a commitment to the core values of the European Union. So thank you for joining me again on this fourth step in our exploration of the obstacles to BRITURN. And if you found this analysis insightful, please like the video, please do share it, and subscribe to Outside Views for more in-depth discussions on European politics and British politics post-Brexit. Let's continue the conversation in the comments, of course, especially what do you think about the UK's ability to align with the EU's rules on the free movement of capital? I look forward to your thoughts, of course, and as always, stay informed and see you in the next video, and one of those is right here in the end screen.